My official prediction, Bryce Mitchell versus Josh Emmett. Now, I got to tell you, I don't remember a time I covered an undercard fight. But these are not undercard fighters. These are main event fighters who are now on an undercard. But that right there is interesting to me. How is a guy going to respond to that? I do not believe it will bother either one of them. I don't believe Bryce Mitchell ever got in this sport looking for a whole bunch of money or a whole bunch of fame. I don't really think that it's going to affect him in the least. And Josh Emmett has never been a guy to go out there and make demands. He has never shined his own wheels. Josh Emmett has looked so good. Oh my goodness. Josh Emmett has looked so good. What a career he's had. Dog tough, surprises you. He's got more upsets. That guy was the underdog more times from 2020 until now and won than anybody else I can think of. But he never made any demands. In fact, Josh Emmett even upset Volkanovski one time because he did not haul Volk out strong enough. You guys might remember that. Josh Emmett fights, becomes the number one contender, like this gets stated. But it doesn't get signed and co-signed and get set official. It was like stated. The problem was 1 week later, Rodriguez was fighting Ortega. To build that fight had to have the idea and the notion that it could be a number one contender's bout. All right, Rodriguez goes out there. He looks incredible. First round, finish. He's a number one contender. Who's a number one contender? Which one of them is the number one contender? Well, Rodriguez is in front of the world. And just to remind you about that fight, it happened to be on ABC. There's more eyeballs on this fight than any modern time UFC event. And if Rodriguez captures those people on that microphone in this moment, it's game, set, match. And even Josh Emmett knows this. Rodriguez did no such thing. He did nothing that was compelling or interesting to set up a match between he and Volkanovski in the slightest. And it was to the point that Volkanovski, and the whole reason I even remember this story, or that I find it interesting enough to repeat it to you guys, is because Volkanovski saw this happen. He's sitting there watching the fight, expecting Rodriguez to call him out. Rodriguez didn't do it. Josh Emmett was in the building that night. You guys might remember that. That was Ticketgate. Remember when Josh Emmett came in? He and his coach, Uriah Faber, was with him. But they didn't have seats. So he who was named the number one contender, who had won 1 week before in a main event, all of a sudden he's up in the stands. I mean, but do you remember that? This was all that same night. Was that an accident? Was that an oversight? Or was that writing on the wall? They didn't want to capture him on camera if you knew that you were going to give the opportunity to Rodriguez if he was to get a win, of which he did. It's just one of these situations where Volk comes out and says, you know what, neither one of you have done a good job of calling me out. Neither one of you have been compelling. Neither one of you is even arguing or suggesting that you have done more and you're more deserving than the other. And I watch this. I follow the show. I'm not a Sandhagen. I know it was said that Emmett's number one contender. I know 1 week later it was said that Rodriguez is number one contender, which means you two have to go after it in the media to win the hearts and minds and prove that you want the job. Neither one of you have done that at all. So just go fight each other. And that right there might be the most trash that Volk has ever talked. And he wasn't even trying to talk trash. He was just saying what he observed. And you know what? That's what they did. They ended up just putting Rodriguez and Emmett, had them go fight each other. But he's so good. Josh Emmett is so good. So he goes from a title fight. I don't care if you put interim in front of it. That's your guys' deal. World title fight. And you go from that to an undercard. It's meaningful. It's impactful for most. Josh Emmett has never appeared to be one of those guys. And those guys are very few. I mean, I'll use Benny DeRouche just by example. Benny has never made big demands for himself. Benny stubbed his toe over the weekend, which represents only the second time he stubbed his toe in 5 years, but he's a little hard on himself. He really understands what's going on, doesn't feel he's in a position to call somebody out, doesn't make that big of a difference to him anyway. Whatever the UFC calls is who he wants to fight. Like, those are things that you say, but very few guys actually mean them. I think Josh Emmett, I've never got to know Josh very well, even at a distance. I've never got to know him very well because he doesn't come out and do very much. I don't believe that it's going to bother him. And I feel as though Josh Emmett is one of those guys, like, you guys are about to see your best version of Josh Emmett. Not maybe, for sure. A 15-minute atmosphere for a gentleman. And so many people think, well, he's down in the dumps, right? It's like a market, and you get down a little bit. There's a truth to that. And we don't know how a guy's going to respond. There's a truth to that. But when you prepare and when you walk into a potentially 25-minute situation, and then you find yourself in a 15-minute situation, it's one of those things where you're going to see the best Josh Emmett. Bryce Mitchell specifically does his best work against fighters that are stronger than him. And for whatever reason, Dan Henderson was this same way. The bigger the guy and the stronger the guy, the better Dan could do. It was just one of the, but I bring that to you because Josh Emmett is the strongest opponent that Bryce has ever taken on. That kind of seems to feed right into his wheelhouse. That is the fight that I am most interested on that hasn't been discussed yet. If I was to look at any fight, not on main card, which has been hyped and put in front of us, Emmett and Mitchell. Mitchell's taking it on short notice, but he is a cardio machine. Mitchell won his last fight against Dan Ige, by the way, but apologized for the performance because his stomach had a little illness that was bothering him. Still found a way to get victory. These are two really impactful guys. It's a treat that you're going to be able to watch them on an undercard. For me, that's the fight to watch. I think there is something to be said for momentum. I think we got a close fight. I'm going to go with Bryce Mitchell. I'm going to put the curse on Bryce Mitchell, but that's the fight no one's talking about.